Please like the video and share it so that it reaches many more people and you get sawaba, or rewards from Allah. This could be a sawabe jariyah or continuous reward for you long after you are gone.
Volume 3, Book 50, number 891. Narrated by Al-Miswar bin Makrama and Marwan, whose narrations attest each other. Allah's apostle set out at the time of Al-Hudaybiyah treaty, and when they proceeded for a distance, he said, Khalid bin al-Walid leading the cavalry of Quraysh constituting the front of the army, is at a place called Al-Gamim, so take the way on the right. By Allah, Khalid did not perceive the arrival of the Muslims till the dust arising from the march of the Muslim army reached him, and then he turned back hurriedly to inform Quraysh. The Prophet went on advancing till he reached the Thaniya, i.e. a mountainous way, through which one would go to them, i.e. people of Quraysh. The she-camel of the Prophet sat down. The people tried their best to cause the she-camel to get up but in vain, so they said, Al-Kaswa, i.e. the she-camel's name, has become stubborn. Al-Kaswa has become stubborn. The Prophet said, Al-Kaswa has not become stubborn, for stubbornness is not her habit. But she was stopped by him who stopped the elephant. Then he said, by the name of him in whose hands my soul is, if they, i.e. the Quraysh infidels, ask me anything which will respect the ordinances of Allah, I will grant it to them. The Prophet then rebuked the she-camel and she got up. The Prophet changed his way till he dismounted at the farthest end of Al-Hudaybiyah at a pit, i.e. well, containing a little water which the people used in small amounts, and in a short while the people used up all its water and complained to Allah's apostle of thirst. The Prophet took an arrow out of his arrow case, and ordered him to put the arrow in that pit. By Allah, the water started and continued sprouting out till all the people quenched their thirst and returned with satisfaction. While they were still in that state, Budail bin Walker al-Khuzai came with some persons from his tribe Khuzah, and they were the advisers of Allah's apostle, who would keep no secret from him and were from the people of Tihama. Budail said, I left Kab bin Lu'ay and Amir bin Lu'ay residing at the profuse water of Al-Hudaybiyah, and they had milch camels, or their women and children, with them, and will wage war against you, and will prevent you from visiting the Kaaba. Allah's apostle said, we have not come to fight anyone, but to perform the Umrah. No doubt, the war has weakened Quraysh and they have suffered great losses, so if they wish, I will conclude a truce with them, during which they should refrain from interfering between me and the people, i.e. the Arab infidels other than Quraysh. And if I have victory over those infidels, Quraysh will have the option to embrace Islam as the other people do. If they wish, they will at least get strong enough to fight. But if they do not accept the truce, by Allah in whose hands my life is, I will fight with them defending my cause till I get killed. But, I am sure, Allah will definitely make his cause victorious. Budail said, I will inform them of what you have said. So, he set off till he reached Quraysh and said, we have come from that man, i.e. Muhammad, whom we heard saying something which we will disclose to you if you should like. Some of the fools among Quraysh shouted that they were not in need of this information, but the wiser among them said, relate what you heard him saying. Budail said, I heard him saying so and so, relating what the Prophet had told him. Urwa bin Mas'ud got up and said, O people, aren't you the sons? They said, yes. He added, am I not the father? They said, yes. He said, do you mistrust me? They said, no. He said, don't you know that I invited the people of Ukaz for your help? And when they refused, I brought my relatives and children and those who obeyed me, to help you. They said, yes. He said, well, this man, i.e. the Prophet, has offered you a reasonable proposal, you'd better accept it and allow me to meet him. They said, you may meet him. So, he went to the Prophet and started talking to him. The Prophet told him almost the same as he had told Budayl. Then Urwa said, "O Muhammad, won't you feel any scruple in extirpating your relations? Have you ever heard of anyone amongst the Arabs extirpating his relatives before you? On the other hand, if the reverse should happen, nobody will aid you, for, by Allah, I do not see, with you, dignified people, but people from various tribes who would run away leaving you alone." Hearing that, Abu Bakr abused him and said, "Do you say we would run and leave the Prophet alone?" Urwa said, "Who is that man?" They said, "He is Abu Bakr." Urwa said to Abu Bakr, "By him in whose hands my life is. Were it not for the favor which you did to me and which I did not compensate, I would retort on you." Urwa kept on talking to the Prophet and seizing the Prophet's beard as he was talking, while al-Mughira bin Shu'bah was standing near the head of the Prophet, holding a sword and wearing a helmet. Whenever Urwa stretched his hand towards the beard of the Prophet, al-Mughira would hit his hand with the handle of the sword and say to Urwa, "Remove your hand from the beard of Allah's apostle." Urwa raised his head and asked, "Who is that?" The people said, "He is al-Mughira bin Shu'bah." Urwa said, "O treacherous! Am I not doing my best to prevent evil consequences of your treachery?" Before embracing Islam, al-Mughira was in the company of some people. He killed them and took their property and came to Medina to embrace Islam. The Prophet said to him, "As regards your Islam, I accept it, but as for the property I do not take anything of it, as it was taken through treason." Urwa then started looking at the companions of the Prophet. By Allah, whenever Allah's apostle spat, the spittle would fall in the hand of one of them, i.e. the Prophet's companions, who would rub it on his face and skin. If he ordered them, they would carry his orders immediately. If he performed ablution, they would struggle to take the remaining water, and when they spoke to him, they would lower their voices and would not look at his face constantly out of respect. Urwa returned to his people and said, "O people, by Allah, I have been to the kings and to Caesar, Khosrau and the Najashi, yet I have never seen any of them respected by his courtiers as much as Muhammad is respected by his companions. By Allah, if he spat, the spittle would fall in the hand of one of them, i.e. the Prophet's companions, who would rub it on his face and skin. If he ordered them, they would carry out his order immediately. If he performed ablution, they would struggle to take the remaining water, and when they spoke, they would lower their voices and would not look at his face constantly out of respect." Urwa added, "No doubt, he has presented to you a good reasonable offer. So please accept it." A man from the tribe of Bani Kanana said, "Allow me to go to him." And they allowed him. And when he approached the Prophet and his companions, Allah's Apla I said, "He is so and so who belongs to the tribe that respects the Budan, i.e. camels of the sacrifice. So, bring the Budan in front of him." So, the Budan were brought before him and the people received him while they were reciting Talbiyah. When he saw that scene, he said, "Glorified be Allah. It is not fair to prevent these people from visiting the Kaaba." When he returned to his people, he said, "I saw the Budan garlanded, with colored knotted ropes, and marked, with stabs on their backs. I do not think it is advisable to prevent them from visiting the Kaaba." Another person called Mikraz bin Hafs got up and sought their permission to go to Muhammad, and they allowed him, too. When he approached the Muslims, the Prophet said, "Here is Mikraz and he is a vicious man." Mikraz started talking to the Prophet, and as he was talking, Suhail bin Amra came. When Suhail bin Amra came, the Prophet said, "Now the matter has become easy." Suhail said to the Prophet, "Please conclude a peace treaty with us." So, the Prophet called the clerk and said to him, "Write, by the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful." Suhail said, "As for beneficent, by Allah, I do not know what it means. So write, by your name O Allah, as you used to write previously. The Muslims said, by Allah, we will not write except by the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. The Prophet said, write, by your name O Allah. Then he dictated, this is the peace treaty which Muhammad, Allah's apostle, has concluded. Suhail said, by Allah, if we knew that you are Allah's apostle we would not prevent you from visiting the Kaaba, and would not fight with you. So, write, Muhammad bin Abdullah. The Prophet said, by Allah, I am apostle of Allah even if you people do not believe me. Write, Muhammad bin Abdullah. Az-Zuhri said, the Prophet accepted all those things, as he had already said that he would accept everything they would demand if it respects the ordinance of Allah, i.e. by letting him and his companions perform Umrah. The Prophet said to Suhail, on the condition that you allow us to visit the house, i.e. Kaaba, so that we may perform tawaf around it. Suhail said, by Allah, we will not allow you this year, so as not to give chance to the Arabs to say that we have yielded to you, but we will allow you next year. So, the Prophet got that written. Then Suhail said, we also stipulate that you should return to us whoever comes to you from us, even if he embraced your religion. The Muslims said, glorified be Allah. How will such a person be returned to the pagans after he has become a Muslim? While they were in this state, Abu Jandal bin Suhail bin Amr came from the valley of Mecca staggering with his fetters and fell down amongst the Muslims. Suhail said, O Muhammad, this is the very first term with which we make peace with you, i.e. you shall return Abu Jandal to me. The Prophet said, the peace treaty has not been written yet. Suhail said, I will never allow you to keep him. The Prophet said, yes, do. He said, I won't do. Mikraz said, we allow you to keep him. Abu Jandal said, O Muslims, will I be returned to the pagans though I have come as a Muslim? Don't you see how much I have suffered? Abu Jandal had been tortured severely for the cause of Allah. Umar bin al-Khattab said, I went to the Prophet and said, aren't you truly the apostle of Allah? The Prophet said, yes, indeed. I said, isn't our cause just and the cause of the enemy unjust? He said, yes. I said, then why should we be humble in our religion? He said, I am Allah's apostle and I do not disobey him, and he will make me victorious. I said, didn't you tell us that we would go to the Kaaba and perform tawaf around it? He said, yes, but did I tell you that we would visit the Kaaba this year? I said, no. He said, so you will visit it and perform tawaf around it. Umar further said, I went to Abu Bakr and said, O Abu Bakr, isn't he truly Allah's prophet? He replied, yes. I said, then why should we be humble in our religion? He said, indeed, he is Allah's apostle and he does not disobey his Lord, and he will make him victorious. Adhere to him as, by Allah, he is on the right. I said, was he not telling us that we would go to the Kaaba and perform tawaf around it? He said, yes, but did he tell you that you would go to the Kaaba this year? I said, no. He said, you will go to Kaaba and perform tawaf around it. Az-Zuhri said, Umar said, I performed many good deeds as expiation for the improper questions I asked them. When the writing of the peace treaty was concluded, Allah's apostle said to his companions, get up and slaughter your sacrifices and get your head shaved. By Allah none of them got up, and the Prophet repeated his order thrice. When none of them got up, he left them and went to Salama and told her of the people's attitudes towards him. Salama said, O the Prophet of Allah, do you want your order to be carried out? Go out and don't say a word to anybody, till you have slaughtered your sacrifice and call your barber to shave your head. So, the Prophet went out and did not talk to any one of them till he did that, i.e. slaughtered the sacrifice and called his barber who shaved his head. Seeing that, the companions of the Prophet got up, slaughtered their sacrifices, and started shaving the heads of one another, and there was so much rush that there was a danger of killing each other. Then some believing women came to the Prophet, and Allah revealed the following divine verses: O you who believe, when the believing women come to you as emigrants, examine them. 60.10. Umar then divorced 2 wives of his who were infidels. Later on, Muawiyah bin Abu Sufyan married one of them, and Safwan bin Umayyah married the other. When the Prophet returned to Medina, Abu Basir, a new Muslim convert from Quraysh, came to him. The infidels sent in his pursuit 2 men who said to the Prophet, "Abide by the promise you gave us." So, the Prophet handed him over to them. They took him out of the city till they reached Dhul Hulayfa, where they dismounted to eat some dates they had with them. Abu Basir said to one of them, "By Allah, O so and so, I see you have a fine sword." The other drew it out of the scabbard and said, "By Allah, it is very fine, and I have tried it many times." Abu Bakr said, "Let me have a look at it." When the other gave it to him, he hit him with it till he died, and his companion ran away till he came to Medina and entered the mosque running. When Allah's apostle saw him, he said, "This man appears to have been frightened." When he reached the Prophet, he said, "My companion has been murdered, and I would have been murdered too." Abu Basir came and said, "O Allah's apostle, by Allah, Allah has made you fulfill your obligations by your returning me to them, i.e. the infidels. But Allah has saved me from them." The Prophet said, "Woe to his mother! What excellent war kindler he would be, should he only have supporters." When Abu Basir heard that, he understood that the Prophet would return him to them again, so he set off till he reached the seashore. Abu Jandal bin Suhail got himself released from him, i.e. infidels, and joined Abu Basir. So, whenever a man from Quraysh embraced Islam, he would follow Abu Basir till they formed a strong group. By Allah, whenever they heard about a caravan of Quraysh heading towards Sham, they stopped it and attacked and killed them, i.e. infidels, and took their properties. The people of Quraysh sent a message to the Prophet requesting him for the sake of Allah and kith and kin to send for, i.e. Abu Basir and his companions, promising that whoever, amongst them, came to the Prophet would be secure. So the Prophet sent for them, i.e. Abu Basir's companions, and Allah revealed the following divine verses. And it is He who has withheld their hands from you and your hands from them in the midst of Mecca, after He made you the victorious over them. The unbelievers had pride and haughtiness in their hearts. The pride and haughtiness of the time of ignorance, 48.24-26, and their pride and haughtiness was that they did not confess, write in the treaty, that he, i.e. Muhammad, was the Prophet of Allah, and refused to write, in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, and prevented the mushriks from visiting the Kaaba. Narrated Az Zuhri, Urwa said, Aisha told me that Allah's apostle used to examine the women emigrants. We have been told also that when Allah revealed the order that the Muslims should return to the pagans what they had spent on their wives who emigrated after embracing Islam, and that the mushriks should not keep unbelieving women as their wives, Umar divorced 2 of his wives, Qariba, the daughter of Abu Urhaya, and the daughter of Jawal al-Kuzi. Later on, Muawiyah married Qariba and Abu Jam married the other. When the pagans refused to pay what the Muslims had spent on their wives, Allah revealed, "And if any of your wives have gone from you to the unbelievers and you have an accession by the coming over of a woman from the other side, then pay to those whose wives have gone the equivalent of what they had spent on their mahr, 60.11. So, Allah ordered that the Muslim whose wife has gone should be given, as a compensation of the mahr he had given to his wife, from the mahr of the wives of the pagans who had emigrated deserting their husbands. We do not know any of the women emigrants who deserted Islam after embracing it. We have also been told that Abu Basir bin Asad at-Thaqafi came to the Prophet as a Muslim emigrant during the truce. Al-Aqnas bin Sharik wrote to the Prophet requesting him to return Abu Basir.